Tonight, we begin with a development that US defence officials had feared, dismissed, and ultimately prepared for. A seizure that unfolded not over days, but in minutes. Minutes that have now thrown American foreign policy into chaos. Minutes that have triggered emergency meetings across Washington. Minutes that could reshape the entire balance of power in the Middle East. What Iran did today crossed a line that the Pentagon had hoped would hold. And when that line broke, the United States did not hesitate. They responded with speed, precision, and unmistakable force. For weeks now, there had been signals, not official statements, not diplomatic cables, just signals that Iran was preparing something provocative. Iran has been aggressive, yes, but they have been calculated in their aggression. And their moves have followed a certain rhythm, a pattern, almost a predictability. But what set off alarm bells in the Pentagon this week was that the pattern went silent. Intelligence analysts who monitor Iranian naval activity know the indicators. The movement of fast attack boats, the positioning of coastal missile batteries, the increased chatter among Revolutionary Guard units, the sudden silence. All of that went quiet. And whenever Iran goes quiet, it means something is about to get loud. Early this morning, US Central Command detected what they described as an aggressive naval interdiction, including Iranian vessels that had not been deployed in over 3 years. These are the kinds of assets that Iran only uses when they are signalling something very specific: defiance, escalation, or provocation. And Pentagon officials didn't know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Iran was changing posture. And when a regional adversary shifts posture without explanation, even by small measures, Washington pays attention. The warning issued by the White House tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Official after emergency briefing described Iran's move as reckless, unprecedented, and perhaps most importantly, deliberately timed to test American resolve. But provocation only works if the target hesitates. The United States did not. In fact, their response today was among the swiftest we've seen in this administration. Here's what we know. Within 45 minutes of the vessel seizure, US forces repositioned assets across the Persian Gulf. These weren't the routine patrols. These were carrier strike group movements, systems that the Navy only deploys when they are preparing to project overwhelming force. Tonight, defence officials confirmed that the US launched reconnaissance operations on Iranian positions, including a coastal facility that had recently been activated for what analysts believe was command and control purposes. American forces moved before Iran could consolidate their position. They surrounded the seizure zone. They established air dominance over the strait. They positioned submarines that were likely preparing to enforce a blockade if necessary. In other words, the US targeted Iran's ability to escalate further, the infrastructure that would have made prolonged detention operational. This is what made the Pentagon's warning so urgent. Iran's seizure wasn't just symbolic, it was actionable. It represented the kind of move that could spiral into open conflict if left unchecked. And Washington, understanding that fully, responded with force. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They didn't fire first. They didn't escalate rhetorically. They positioned assets. They demonstrated capability. And here's where the story becomes even more alarming. Intelligence officials now believe that Iran's latest move was designed to test the resolve of American leadership after months of diplomatic uncertainty. Iran wanted to see whether Washington would respond with weakness, but instead the opposite happened. The Pentagon didn't blink. They issued a response that was so immediate, so coordinated, that even Tehran noticed. You don't get Iran's attention easily, but today the United States did. Military analysts speaking with NBC News under anonymity described Iran's shift as strategic probing, a way to measure American commitment to the region. But America proved today that they remain both vigilant and capable. Their movements were not only rapid, and they were coordinated so precisely that Iranian forces reportedly halted further operations. That detail matters because it shows deterrence still works. It shows that the United States is not a passive observer. They are an active guarantor of regional stability. As reports continued coming in throughout the day, we learned more about the scale of America's response. The USS Eisenhower carrier strike group repositioned to the northern Gulf, forcing Iranian vessels to retreat to territorial waters. F/A-18 squadrons targeted radar installations that had been activated in the last 72 hours. Navy SEALs operating near Bahrain reportedly disabled communication relays used by Iran to coordinate with proxy forces. This wasn't just a response. This wasn't just a warning. This was a demonstration. This was a message. And messaging is the one thing Iran has struggled to control since this crisis began. For every provocation they have made, America has countered with something that neutralises their advantage. Remember, Iran thought America was distracted. They thought domestic politics would prevent a strong response. They thought international pressure would force restraint, but tonight the exact opposite is happening. America is unified in its response. And allies are issuing supportive statements, and Iran is facing isolation they did not anticipate. What makes this moment so dangerous and so consequential is that Iran's latest move happened at a time when Supreme Leader Khamenei is under immense internal pressure. Hardliners want confrontation, reformers want negotiation, the Revolutionary Guard wants to demonstrate strength, the economy wants sanctions relief. Khamenei is balancing these demands while managing a population increasingly frustrated with the regime. And when leaders in that position make sudden moves, they're not doing it from strength. They're doing it from pressure. They're doing it from vulnerability. The White House's statement, now distributed to every major news outlet, was designed to signal that America is not willing to tolerate hostage diplomacy. But officials said plainly that Iran's seizure was inconsistent with international maritime law. That is diplomatic language for, this is an act of aggression, and we will respond accordingly. You don't usually hear that tone from the State Department unless something serious is at stake. Meanwhile, President Biden addressed the nation in a brief, direct speech tonight. He said American service members will not be used as bargaining chips. He said, we have communicated to Tehran that there will be consequences. And he said, the United States does not seek war, but we will not tolerate provocation. These are not rhetorical flourishes. These are statements from a commander-in-chief that understands just how high the stakes have become. Here's what makes the situation even more concerning. And Iran's latest move wasn't isolated, along with the vessel seizure. Hezbollah also increased rocket fire toward northern Israel. Houthi forces launched another drone toward a commercial vessel. Iranian-backed militias increased attacks targeting US bases in Iraq. All of this happened within the same 48-hour period. When Iran moves multiple pieces at once, it means something larger is underway. Analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that Iran is preparing for broader regional escalation. Another is that Iran is attempting to force a diplomatic breakthrough through pressure. A third possibility, the one worrying officials the most, is that Iran is attempting to distract from internal instability by manufacturing an external crisis. But today, America took that card off the table. They didn't delay, they didn't equivocate, they didn't send mixed signals, they responded with clarity. What we're watching now is a test of American credibility. Iran wants to see if America will back down. America wants to show that it will not. The Pentagon wants to prevent escalation, and the State Department wants to prevent war. Tonight, we've heard from intelligence officials who are now monitoring Iranian communications. They say Tehran did not expect this level of response. They say Revolutionary Guard commanders are recalculating. And they say Iran's decision to seize those vessels is likely part of a broader pressure campaign intended to extract concessions. But America is not backing down. In fact, America is doubling down their response today. Swift, coordinated, and overwhelming, sent a message to Iran that this will not stand. And it sent a message to the world that American commitments remain ironclad. As the night goes on, we expect more details to emerge about what exactly Iran hoped to achieve. But what we do know is that Washington's response was timely. It prevented further escalation, it reassured allies, and it restored deterrence. What happens next will depend on what Iran does in the next 24 hours. If they release the vessels, this moment will be remembered as a failed provocation. If they escalate further, the United States has already shown they are prepared. They have shown they are ready to respond. And tonight, for the first time in months, Iran appears to be uncertain. Tehran is quiet, too quiet, and when Iran is quiet, it means they are recalculating. It means they are choosing their next move carefully, because tonight Iran learned something they have learned many times before. America does not abandon its people. America does not tolerate aggression. And America does not back down. This story is far from over, but tonight one thing is clear: the vessels will be recovered. The sailors will come home, and Iran will face consequences, and we will be here watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.